What are some very creepy facts? The Colombian serial killer Pedro Alonso Lopez, who is known as the Monster of the Ants, raped and murdered over 300 girls from Ecuador, Peru and Colombia. However, after he was caught and imprisoned for 18 years, he was put in a psychiatric hospital. There he was reviewed, declared to be sane, and was set free, in spite of his blatant avowal that he fully intends to kill again. Since he was released in 1998, nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. He is supposed to be 71 years old at present. He is known for being the most prolific killer ever. If you get a blood transfusion and get the wrong type of blood, A, B, O, AB, one of the symptoms is a sense of impending doom. There is a genetic disease called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. When tissue is damaged, it is replaced with bone. Growths form underneath their skin and their joints lock solid. So over time those affected slowly become encased in a prison of bone just beneath their own skin. They usually have to choose between sitting or standing up for the rest of their life. By the end of their life they have to drink every meal through a straw and can barely move. Over 90% of serial killers choose their victims through sexual desire. In fact, many serial killers have been caught because they return to the body of their victims to masturbate. Bacteria and viruses can be frozen for millions of years and still be viably infectious, and having never encountered humanity before, could have no end of catastrophic results should they be uncovered and manage to infect a person or animal. Not to worry though. It's not like millions of ancient pathogens are currently trapped in permafrost which is now melting bit by bit each and every day. Your eyes have a separate immune system from the rest of your body. If they get damaged in such a way that it affects anything other than your eyes, your regular immune system can attack the damage and will not recognize them, meaning your own body can permanently blind you. What's worse, your body cannot tell the difference between either eye. If one of them gets infected or damaged, your immune system can attack your healthy eye and take away your sight entirely. Rosemary Kennedy was JFK's sister. She suffered from oxygen deprivation at birth and that unfortunately stunted her mental growth. She had a pretty decent childhood, but as she grew older she began to act out, afraid that her behavior would risk his political career. Her father, Joseph, agreed to have her lobotomized. Her mother, Rose, was against it and forbade him from doing it, so he did it behind her back when she went on a trip. After the operation, Rosemary's already low IQ was lowered even further, to the point she could no longer walk or communicate. Her family had her locked up in an institution and basically disowned her. They never visited and never publicly acknowledged her anymore. Rosemary died at the age of 86. Her mother never forgave her husband for what he had done. It's unknown if she had that low of an IQ, though she did have some brain damage at birth. She was functional enough to read and write, and part of the reason she was lobotomized may have involved sleeping around and being defiant. She had an active social life. Imagine being lobotomized because the general standard of the family was people like JFK and RFK, and you weren't living up to it. Yeah. Before the lobotomy her IQ was low for someone her age, but she was capable. After it, she couldn't really do anything. Well, when you're in a high class family, you're expected to act a certain way. Remember that bath salts cannibal guy from a couple years back? He wasn't high on bath salts when he did that. That was just media speculation and bullshit. They only found pot in his system during the autopsy. We still have no idea why he flipped out. The Chankiri tree is a tree in the Cambodian killing fields against which babies and small children were bashed after their parents had been killed. The men of the ship Essex, the true event that inspires the story Moby Dick, avoided islands after being shipwrecked for fear of cannibals. The islands were settled, and landing there would have brought salvation to the survivors. Ironically, because of this bypass, the men ran out of food and were forced to eat each other for survival. You know what's even creepier? 2 of the sailors were later rescued by an American ship. They were alone at sea for so long and had to cannibalize their crewmates to survive. When they saw their rescuers, they immediately stashed bones in their pockets. They didn't seem to care that they were rescued. They were obsessed with the bones of their fallen crewmates, so they can suck on the bone marrows. Even after they were on board the ship, they refused to depart from the bones and would even attack anyone who would come close. After raping his blindfolded victims, the Golden State Killer would be super duper quiet and pretend like he was gone, and right when the poor victims would start to move towards the phone or try to untie themselves, he would scare the ducking shit out of them. One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching on one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. Imagine being totally aware of someone performing CPR, but you physically can't move or respond. Well, that's what happens when you get bitten by a blue-ringed octopus. You have approximate 6 minutes between being bitten and someone starting CPR to keep your heart and lungs functioning to ensure you survive, all whilst being totally aware of what is happening to you. Neurotoxins are fun. The really creepy thing about this is one story of a guy who got stung, got CPR performed on him and survived, but went blind because he was lying on his back, eyes open, unable to blink because of the paralysis, staring into the sun. Imagine lying there, unable to move, unable to communicate, the sun slowly burning out your eyes and you can't shut them. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. There's a parasite that enters a fish's mouth, eats the tongue, and replaces itself as the fish's new tongue. According to Abe Lincoln's bodyguard Crook, he said Lincoln had a dream about his own assassination 3 nights in a row before he was killed. Crook told Lincoln not to go on that fateful night, and all Lincoln said was goodbye. Crook before he went to the play. This was very odd as Lincoln always said, good night not goodbye. I bring this up at parties all the time. When climbing Mount Everest, there's a point nicknamed Rainbow Valley or Rainbow Ridge because it's absolutely littered with the bodies of people who attempted to make the climb. The combination of the extremely cold temperature and the bright snowsuits means that they've become a never-rotting but colorful landmark. Mount Everest is covered in frozen corpses because removing them is very unsafe and time-consuming. They are easily viewed from the climbing routes and some are used as trail markers. What's odd is that, although the bodies are prominent, in some cases there is no consensus on their identity. Like over the years 2 different people with a similar description didn't return from their Everest climb. And we know the body is probably one of them, but not sure which. Or is it more creepy that some of the bodies are indeed identified, and somewhere out there is a family who knows full well that their loved one's remains are a landmark on the world's most famous mountain? After getting stung by a cone snail, you don't feel the sting for a little bit. There is no antivenin, and it can be lethal. Treatment is basically keeping the victim alive until the venom wears off. CNN has had a pre-recorded broadcast from the 90s which they will premiere during the end of the world. People don't take their antimalarial drugs when they travel because they hear bad stories about the side effects and they see native people in the areas living okay without taking pills every day. The truth is, populations native to malaria endemic areas have all passed through pretty intense natural selection for survival and have a host of genes that prevent them from dying or suffering the other worst effects. Also, most of the resistance is built up over time. This is why it's most common for children to die rather than adults. Whatever people have heard about the side effects of the antimalarials, getting it is so much worse. I, fortunately, have never had it, but I study it as part of my work and people have told me about having it, and they all say the same thing. It is so awful you can't believe you're even still alive. It comes in cycles, usually 48 hours, and each cycle is agonizing and brings you the brink of death. Sometimes it takes you, sometimes it spares you for another few hours until it starts again. And there are forms that, even if you clear the infection with drugs, it still remains dormant in your system and can come back at any time. Edit. I don't want to freak people out too much. There are drug combinations that can kill every stage of the parasite as long as there is no drug resistance. A black mamba is the fastest snake which can slither at a speed of 12.5 miles an hour, 20 km/h. They have neurotoxins which are fast acting. The venom shuts down the nervous system and paralyzes the victim. Its venom is able to kill 10 people and it repeatedly bites. To add on to this, there is an almost 100% kill rate and can kill in 20 minutes. When I went on a safari, the guide had no problem driving by the family of lions, cougars, crazy hippos, everything else we saw. However, when he spotted a black mamba, this incredible fear came over his face. The snake was right in the middle of the dirt road and he wouldn't even drive past it. We were in one of those open Jeep safari things. The guide was so frightened that he just zoomed in reverse and got away so quickly. He said they can jump up in the car and do all kinds of crazy things. I don't know if that's true, but I know that he was genuinely afraid and we got out of that area so fast. Cockroaches have been recorded eating human flesh, both living and dead, as well as fingernails, eyelashes, feet, and hands. The American cockroach and German cockroach are more likely to bite humans than other species. Pretty sure Australian cockroaches do something equally creepy. But as an Australian who plans to sleep at some point in the future, I'm not going to Google it. Blobfish in its natural habitat looks like a normal fish, but it lives so deep underwater that it doesn't use a normal gas bladder to keep itself balanced. Instead, it has a spongy skin that is slightly less dense than water, which becomes damaged and bloated when fishermen bring it up too quickly. It's not really the ugliest fish. It has just experienced something worse than one of us being thrown into outer space. Between sea level and space, there's 1 atmospheric pressure of difference. Between sea level and 2,000 feet underwater, their upper limit, there's 60 atmospheres of difference. If you stifle a sneeze, there's a chance you can damage organs in your head, including eye blood vessels, rupturing your eardrums, and possibly rupture a brain aneurysm, which means there's a small chance stifling a sneeze can kill you. Better to be the loud ass with the sneeze that can be heard around the world than a dead loud ass cause someone told you to stifle that sneeze. In the Czech Republic, there is a church called the Sedle Košuary that has decorations made entirely of human bones. This happened because there were too many people in the cemetery to bury everyone, and the church leaders claimed that if their bones became part of the church, it only made them closer to God. Nice propaganda spin there, guys. In the US, if someone is kidnapped and not found within about a day, then there is a 97% chance the kidnapped person is dead, and 3/4 of them are killed within the first 3 hours of their abduction. That's why it's so important to go the police right away, and for the cops to actually act immediately instead of waiting 24/48/72 hours. Edit. I'm not sure where that myth of wait X hours to notify the police came from, but I've heard so many missing persons cases where the police wouldn't act for a day or two unless there was serious evidence of foul play, because they are an adult and it's not illegal for an adult to go missing, or the teenager is with friends somewhere, or they're a runaway. Children under the age of 12 always get priority, but older ones tend to come with excuses. Valuable time wasted leads to valuable lives wasted. Open bracket. John Harvey Kellogg was a prude, so he and his brother invented cornflakes and recommend cutting your foreskin to stop males from wanking. For females, he suggested rubbing carbolic acid on the clitoris, but fortunately that didn't catch on in the West. A Japanese secret human experimentation group called Unit 731 performed experiments on infants, children and adults without anesthetic. They would cut out stomachs and reattach the esophagus to the intestines, remove limbs and see how long people would die from blood loss, remove parts of livers, brains and other organs. They would expose people to diseases and then dissected them alive. In all, an estimated 500,000 people were killed in these experiments. Unit 731 was given immunity from prosecution by the US government in order for the US to get access to the results of the experiments. Edit 1. To say that the above descriptions really only touch on the surface of the horrors that were performed by Unit 731. If you are squeamish, I would not recommend reading into this any further. Edit 2. To join the dots. If you have ever accessed healthcare, Much of what we know about how the body responds to different traumas came from these experiments. So, every time you are treated in a hospital you are indirectly benefiting from these experiments. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before they turn 18 years old, usually by someone they know and trust. I remember reading that on a poster in my middle school hallway thinking it wouldn't be me, because my family and friends were all kind people. Turns out grandpa didn't love me the way I thought he did. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.